Hey, Adam here, and welcome back. If you've been keeping up with the news, or if you've been on social media, you might have come across the disappearance of Lyuda Kuzina. This was very recent and occurred last month in August, so that's why I'm covering this one today. This disappearance does have odd qualities to it, and while reading up on this, I actually came across two more, and potentially a third disappearance that are very similar. I was hoping to be able to report on them in this video too, but I've unfortunately lost a day this week, so I'll be sure to report on them in next week's video. Now, let's zoom into the area. One-year-old Lyuda Kuzina disappeared on the 17th of August from her family home near the Tyomkinsky district, which is located in the Smolensk region. The home was located right on one of the edges bordering the forest. As you can see outside the town, it's quite rural and is surrounded by a lot of forestry. It's not clear why, but when Lyuda disappeared, the authorities immediately suspected that a third party was involved and basically suspected the worst case scenario. It seems to me that the surrounding wilderness areas must be quite harsh and difficult to navigate because as the authorities were searching, various search crews were on their way. However, the Ministry of Emergency Situations and the police arrived there. The first crews simply could not find each other. In this area, there is no phone reception or internet communications. The navigator also turned out to be useless, said one of the searchers. Rescuers recruited divers. There were water bodies nearby, and there is a possibility that she may have fallen in. Specifically, what looks to have happened here is that while searching, these rescue groups had a pre-planned route and were supposed to meet up and connect at various key points. However, because they were having a hard time navigating the area, they clearly weren't ending up where they should have been. Now let's have a look at the moment of disappearance. The parents said that the girl was playing in the yard with the other child. Her mother went to her neighbour. The girl was about to follow her but turned towards the house. When the mother returned, Lyuda was gone. Her father is a nuclear physicist and the family is prosperous. The parents said that Lyuda is quite strong and can walk a couple of kilometres. Sources seem to contradict one another as to whether it was the mother or father who was the nuclear physicist. I believe it was actually the mother. Anyway, obviously the search was having some difficulty due to the terrain and lack of communications in the area, but it was something that was expanding rapidly. Potentially, I suppose, making things even harder to organise, but it seems to me that in this situation, having more people and being able to spread out over a larger area is key in circumstances like this. A helicopter patrolled the skies, checking the area. This was perhaps one of the largest search operations in recent years. Several hundred people took part in it, and time was against the rescuers. The search did not stop day or night. In addition, the nights are now quite cold, and the chances of survival for an unprepared person trend to zero. From going through these articles, the expectation seemed to be that they weren't going to be bringing her back in good condition, let's just put it that way. They seemed to think that because of the temperatures, the wildlife in the area, and how dangerous it is in general, that they were looking for a body. So I'm sure you can imagine everyone's surprise when they found her alive after 4 days and 3 nights. Some of the searchers involved were saying that her discovery was nothing short of a miracle. So why don't we have a further look at this then and get some more specifics together. Lyuda became estranged from her mother while playing in her unfenced garden. Some 500 searchers joined a massive rescue effort for the girl, and hope seemed to be dashed when she suddenly appeared to them alive. Lyuda was eventually located about 2.5 miles from her home. Now Lyuda's parents did say initially that they believed that she could walk a couple of kilometres, which is around 1.2 miles, and she was found between 2.5 and 3 miles away. We also get some conflicting information when compared to the first source. Lyuda was found in an area of fallen trees in the middle of a forest where wild animals roam, including brown bears and wolves. Nighttime temperatures were unusually warm, around 20 degrees Celsius, which helped her to survive, amazingly. The first source indicated that it was cold at night, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. It's also in dispute again shortly, and we do find out that some of the nights were wet and cold. We also find out that Lyuda was weak, had insect bites all over the place, and also managed to lose some of her clothing whilst missing, which was never recovered. One of the groups stopped to rest after searching for a long time, and suddenly they heard a faint squeak. They called again and heard another squeak. The rescuers added. Lyuda immediately stretched out her thin arms and snuggled tightly to her rescuers. I found this comment interesting. Sure enough, there was little Lyuda riding on the back of a bear. Okay, not really, but would all like to believe that if a toddler ran into a wild sow, she'd become the new favourite cub. After all, there are many full-grown adults that come out of 3 days in the forest in much worse condition than this child. Firstly, I've actually made a video in which really young people have gone missing, only to state that they were taken and cared for by a bear. I'll link that at the top right now and in the description if you'd like to open a new tab. Cases there range from very recent all the way back to the 1800s. In any case, the writer for Outsider.com makes a great point there. Many adults have come out from situations like this in far worse condition or not at all, and here we have Lyuda completely uninjured. We know that she was uninjured because the regional health minister said as much and then clarified that her condition is moderate but there's nothing threatening to her well-being. It'd be so interesting to see what her time was like while out there alone. It's difficult to even imagine what the nights may have looked like, but thank God she was found before she had to experience another one. Now, we have conflicting information on the temperatures overnight again, but this is the accurate report. The female rescuer from the volunteer search squad is seen in the new video moments after she was found carrying the girl, alert and conscious despite night temperatures sinking to 10 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure why it was so difficult to get a handle on the temperatures here, and other specific information too. Earlier it was stated that Lyuda's father was a nuclear physicist, but most sources indicate that this was her mother. And as said, I believe it is actually her mother. Not that that detail matters much, I'm just not sure why all of the sources are conflicting one another like this. Even the original Russian sources are doing this too. Anyway, here's some more information from Lyuda's mother. There was such despair when she was lost. So many people were looking and not finding her. We thought maybe that she'd been knocked by a car or taken. After 3 nights in the forest, of course, we thought at best we will find her unconscious. On the 2nd night, there was a heavy shower and the 3rd night was cold. I don't know how she held out for so long. Okay, even though we don't have specifics, at least we have that testimony from the mother, who's clarifying that it had been cold overnight, which of course is fairly important to know. Lyuda's mother also seems to share a similar opinion that I've seen expressed from others involved in the situation. That being that Lyuda seems to have come away from this situation in far better condition than anyone was expecting. And this is expressed a lot too in a sense, because it's constantly being referred to as a miracle. Under the next header, titled Miraculous Survival, we get this. Wearing only minimal clothing, she was weak and bitten by ticks and insects and stung by nettles. Her feet were hurting from barefoot walking as she tried to find her way home, but ended up deeper in the forest where bears and wolves roam. Veteran rescuer Pavel Baranovsky said, "An adult in such a situation begins to panic, break through bushes, run somewhere. But a child might take it as an adventure. She slept at times and stored the resources of her body. You can go without food for a long time. She must have drank water from streams. And for Lyuda, it seems as though wandering through the woods was not a lot of stress. She did not perceive it as something terrible, except maybe at night. The only thing, miraculously, she survived the cold. Hypothermia could end badly. There were moments when we thought that the girl was definitely frozen." Okay, there we go. We also have a rescuer talking about how cold the nights were and showing surprise at her survival. So I suppose one question almost certainly has to become, how does a 1-year-old who's missing clothing, including a top and only wearing underwear, survive these kinds of conditions? This is a question I found myself asking quite a lot through some of these disappearances. At least in some of the cases in the past, especially from the bear video I mentioned earlier, at least in those instances, if the children were to be believed that they'd spent time in the woods with a bear, at least you could reason that if they did, it was the warmth of the bear that kept them warm. There's no evidence anything like that happened here. It's weird. Early on, when the authorities pretty much immediately suspected some kind of third-party involvement, we find that this seemed to come after a report was made about a vehicle in the area. I've seen discussions that perhaps this person took Lyuda, and then after things started to escalate in terms of the search and the publicity, this person then placed her in the forest. However, there is no evidence that supports this at all. Lyuda's injuries were consistent with someone walking around in a forest with hardly any clothes on for days, and there were no other injuries to indicate that anything had happened in terms of a third party. I do understand these suspicions though, because in some sense, you could at least then argue that, in that scenario, that's how she'd have been shielded from the cold, but there isn't any indication that happened. And as said, everything seems to be consistent with walking around the forest for days. It's also interesting because it appears as though the searchers may have been very close to her for the entire time. Lyuda's mother said this: "The volunteers told me they hadn't been far away from the spot on the first day. It was only on the fourth day when they heard a squeak that they found her in some branches under a tree." This is probably fairly obvious too, but I haven't mentioned it yet. Lyuda had no food or water with her when she disappeared. We also learned some more information. She survived fierce thunderstorms and temperatures as low as 10 degrees Celsius. Lyuda's mother said, "I never thought my child could go so far. It was a big lesson for me." When we ask her, "Where have you been, Lyuda?" she just replies, "In the woods." It's interesting because it seems as though the parents were quite curious about the whole ordeal. Naturally, I might add. The parents also said that she'd been telling them fairy tales and referring to herself as a princess. They didn't share what the tales were, it might not even have been about the forest. In any case, and rather abruptly, that's where the paper trail ends. As mentioned, I was planning on covering 2 more and maybe a third disappearance that are very similar to Lyuda's incident, but I had unfortunately 1 day less than usual, so I just kind of ran out of time to work on this video. However, I'll make sure that the next video is on these disappearances, and that'll probably be a week today. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching. If you found the video interesting, then please do subscribe and hit the like button and the notification bell on your way out. If you didn't, then feel free to give the video a dislike. I'm just looking for your honest opinion, either way. Be sure to leave your thoughts, and other than that, I hope you've had a great day or evening depending on where you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Be safe guys, peace.